All right, so thanks everyone for joining us again tonight. This will be our fourth now of our
Fourth.
Hop Lockdown Zoom call series. So we're excited to have on Ty Blankmeyer, who's the Northeast area scout for the Milwaukee Brewers. Ty, thanks for coming on and being with us today.
Yeah, I'm fired up to be here. Exciting times right now in the quarantine.
Yeah, no, like we were talking about before, and I've mentioned it to everyone who's kind of been on the call before, it's a good time to kind of continue your education and learn a lot from a lot of awesome minds in not only baseball but softball as well. So I think first, why don't you give a little bit of background on yourself, talk a little bit about kind of your playing days up until your time now with the Brewers.
So for me, I grew up in a baseball family. All my uncles are baseball coaches. My father's a baseball coach. So I kind of been around the game my whole life. My father was the head coach at St. John's. Now he's going to be the manager for the Brooklyn Cyclones and is in the Mets organization. And my uncle coached at Seton Hall University. And my grandfather was a longtime coach at Seton Hall University. So I kind of grew up in a baseball family. I went over to play at St. John's in Queens, New York for my father. And that was a really great experience. Played with a lot of great players and against a lot of great players. And then I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to get drafted in the 36th round in 2016 for the Cincinnati Reds. And I got played a year. I did okay. Went to extended. I kind of knew I wasn't, look in the mirror. I wasn't that good of I wasn't that good in comparison to everybody else. And but when they had released me and I was able to be retained by them and work in player development in the Arizona League. And I kind of was another Arizona League coach. And from there in August, I was hired by the Brewers. So I've been with the Brewers for almost 3 years now. And I love it. Good organization. They're on the front end of a lot of things. And, it's I have nothing but great things to say about that organization. And now I'm here on this Zoom call in 2020 and quarantine. So no, but it's been great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know that's one of the things when you and I kind of first connected back in, what was it, January, I think, when we first met.
Yeah.
I know we kind of hit it off right away, talking about player development and some of the different things in Rapsodo, and especially from the pitching side. So why don't you talk a little bit about, I know, getting into a little more of your youth, growing up with, I'm sure most people know, if they know college baseball, they know your dad who's at St. John's for a while. So kind of talk a little bit about kind of growing up in that household and kind of the stuff you learned and how it kind of helped you throughout your years in baseball and into scouting now and kind of learning the player evaluation side, because I think that's something that's really important. That, I mean, whether it's the professional side or the college recruiting side, understanding what your players need to do to be looked at in the right light is important. So kind of the stuff you learn that help you formulate your view on scouting nowadays.
So the first thing I'll say, for coaches and anybody, but my dad always said, to me growing up, trying to understand, was you're only as good as your players, and you're only as good as how good your players want to be. So how much they're willing to work. So there is an element of talent, but having the right mental aptitude and the right mind to combat that is just as important. But just being around, I think at a young age, I saw a lot of great players. In high school, I was taking ground balls with Joe Panic, and just seeing how those guys had a knack for the game. It just seemed like they were just a step ahead of everybody else. They had ability to adjust, to make adjustments. And there was an element, the great ones have an element of consistency. And I want to, the one thing that, I think this opportunity of this quarantine has for people is they can work on their consistency with everything. And so, I talked about, seeing different aspects of players is the aspect of consistency is very important. But to get into the meat and potatoes of it, you talk players. I mean, how everybody goes back to the 5 tools. What can he do? And if you're a position player, if you can't hit, are the arbitrary tools the run, defend, throw, good enough to let the bat come along, right? And on the pitching side, like, are you what kind of ability, like how to manipulate the baseball, or like are you the guy that is more of a velo guy that we're buying that asset to see if we can have strike lightning in a bottle. So I know I gave you a general sense there, and I kind of went all over the place, but that's more or less what I picked up over my time. I mean,
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, and Matt, if you want to kind of go ahead and.
Yeah, when it comes to looking at consistency and practice and stuff like that, would you have some advice for someone who maybe has either is really good at 2 of the 5 qualities, but maybe average at the 3? Would you feed more into working on being really good at what you're good at, or trying to round yourself off? Because we talked to Ryan Johansson in our last seminar, and one of the things he talked about was really focusing on your strengths and playing to those, as well as maybe not trying to become a perfect athlete, but playing towards your strengths.
Yeah, I think the most important thing about that is being a good self-evaluator, right? So if you know who you are, and and if we're going to specifically the high school, college, this is more pertinent to, but if you know who you are and what your strengths are, what kind of player you are. If you're a side armor, you shouldn't be working on 12 to 6 curveball sort of thing. Like honing your craft and being consistent with it and buying in completely, because consistency compounds. You want to, like I said, you want to know who you are, and once you know who you are, that's when you could know where to go all in at.
Yep.
Right. I was a 5'7", 5'8", 160-pound second baseman that could barely hit the ball out of the infield. And there was a point in my life where I mean, playing in college, it was great, but then the first batting practice and professionally, I'm so thankful that I saw this, because this has helped me to this point today. I realized, like, I was somehow gotten a group full of rehab major leaguers, and I was like, they were dropping balls, and I was like, well, I can't hit 5 balls to match that dude's 500 football. So I got to be better at what I was, hitting line drives, spraying the ball all over the place, and owning that part of my craft to be successful. Now, that's a lot of the reason why I'm here and I'm scouting, is because I couldn't hit those balls, but I knew what it was I needed to do to be successful in the short term. So to know who you are and what you're good at. And that takes a lot of time, just personal reflection, but talking to coaches and being honest and having that black and white discussion and being able to take that in and say, all right, this is what I got to get. This is what I got to get good at, so I can go play at the Division I or Division II level, or this is what I have to excel at and get drafted or get to AA, because there's a point in which the bar just gets a little bit better. So, and I think what the best ones do is they know themselves, they know the way their body works, and they know like what their stuff and whatever it is that they do to be successful, and they're really good at it.
So how would you kind of relate that to how baseball has become so metric driven, where you're going to these showcases and stuff like that, where coaches seem to be placing such an emphasis on just using the baseline, like you have to get to a certain level, otherwise I'm crossing you off my list. And how would you tell a player like to still be able to focus on what they're good at, but then they're also hearing on one side, like for example, the kid who's a really good baseball player, but maybe their exit velo isn't quite where it needs to be, and they're hearing that their names are getting crossed off their list just because they can't be at that level.
So that's a very good question, because I think a lot of what is going on now with the landscape of baseball is there's less, like, for that specific guy that exit velo is down, there's less there's less I'd say there's less playing than there is showcasing, right? Showcasing seems more important because these guys are getting the most bang for their buck. However, there is an element of projection, dreaming on guys, you know, and that will never go away because that's the human element. So for those kids, I would say, like, if you're not a huge exit velo guy, that's fine, you know, but just know where your strength lies. Where, like, is your exit velo, like, so if it's low or if it's like below average, what do you got? You got to be better at putting the ball in play. You got to have a better feel for the strike zone. You have to do those other things and know what it is a little bit better to keep you there. You know, because if your exit velo is low and you're swinging for it and you're swinging for exit velo, well, your pitch selection is going to go down, right? And your ability to make consistent, solid contact for you is going to go down. So with that being said, you need to hone in on that, and you need to be honest with yourself about that, because that's where like those guys that, you know, hey, he's, you know, I don't get it physically, he's not as good as me, like, I'm whatever. That's where those guys are better, because they know what they can do, and they know what they can do to beat you. It's like playing chess, you know. That's a good analogy, because if the guy who can, like, chess versus checkers, the guy who can just plays checkers, you know, he's going to be okay. But the guy who can play chess is going to outlast his ability.
Like a good example would be, do you think that David Eckstein, who's a phenomenal baseball player, would have gotten drafted in today's draft out of college?
So Eckstein's one of my favorite players growing up, but so he was an SEC performer. So I think he still would have got a shot, because you can't turn your back on that. But, you know, talking to an old scout about David Eckstein, because I asked the same thing, because he had a very bad arm. Like, you wouldn't see that arm play big league shortstop right now. I don't think, like, you don't see that arm anymore.
Yep.
But they said David Eckstein, like, built himself to be a baseball player. Like, what he did, the workouts he did, the will he had, the mental toughness he had to have, to make that. So I think he, like, just because he performed and he was so good mentally, he still gets a shot. And a little example, in college, I looked up to Eckstein. So we had somebody like, hey, David Eckstein, like, somebody, like, was connected with him on Twitter, I asked him, like, find out David Eckstein's approach. And this ties into what we're saying, and knowing yourself and knowing who you are. David Eckstein said his approach was to get on the plate and to look to pull the ball out in front, because that was the only part of the field where he could beat an outfielder, like hit the ball over the outfielder's head. So, yeah, like, just like little that, because he knew he wasn't going to go spray a ball over the center fielder or right fielder's head, but he knew himself to get on the plate and take advantage of that, where he can pull and he could beat an outfielder, hit the ball to the ballpark.
And I think a key example with a guy like that too is that, kind of tying it back to how baseball is run today, is that he's learning. He learned the game, and he was very good at the game of baseball. Whereas sometimes you see a lot of kids, they're good at showcasing, or they're good at just playing instead of working on a lot of practicing and understanding situations and knowing what they're supposed to be doing within the context of the game itself. So that's something where I feel like kids are lacking a little bit, just because they're playing so many games but not learning it. Can you speak on that?
I agree. Yeah. I think that's good. That's a really good point. And I think, you know, part of it is, like, you know, like growing up, like, I'm sure you grew up playing wiffle ball, playing in the street. Like, that's where instincts are made. That free-flowing style of play, nothing to lose. Like, I think that's where it all derived from. But, you know, I think part of it is just watching the game and watching, like, your favorite player without the ball. Like, watch Nick Ahmed. You know, if you're a shortstop, watch Nick Ahmed and watch how he plays without the ball. Like, when the ball's not hit to him with runners on base, where's he going? Where's he moving? And that's what kind of starts to get your brain thinking. You know, I think I heard another scout say, like, listen to the game, because you hear different perspectives and what guys are doing without the ball, because that gets you thinking too. So that you're absolutely right on that. But like there is, like I said, it's a balance of tools and instincts, and you're trying to find that sweet spot of where those guys are gonna flourish.
Yep. John, you want to tie in something?
I think this is something that you and I, Ty, had kind of talked about over text, is how you wanted to get into the mental side. And I think this kind of segues well into consistency, because when you're evaluating a player, you're seeing him multiple times, maybe at his highs, his lows. I'd like you to talk a little bit about consistency, and like, when you're evaluating consistency, what do you see in a guy from a personality standpoint that's like, hey, this guy has it, even if you see him at his worst?
So that's the best part. When you know a guy enough and you have history and you've seen his best, but when the best thing is when you see his worst, because then you see everything. You see his body language. You see how he treats his teammates. You see how, like, hey, I gave up a home run, but guess what? Next pitch. Like, you can't see that, because I think that is really what mental toughness is.
Yeah.
Is when you could see those guys who fail and fail, but guess what? Same guy every day. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I think that's where consistency is built on. Now, everybody has, like, there's going to come a point where everyone's going to get a little frustrated, and that's going to happen, right? But how you combat that with being present and working on the mind, I think that's the big thing. Seeing guys on the worst day, to me, that's like, if you really like a guy and you see him on his worst day and you see, like, how he responds, that's like, you're really getting the picture painted, per se, on that player. There's not a better thing you could see, honestly.
So when you talk about guys and showing emotion on the field, how do like people in the scouting community look at that sort of, how, like, where is that line between, okay, that's okay, but maybe that's a little bit too much or uncalled for?
Yeah, so I think that's good. I mean, I think you got to watch for the guy that's pumping his chest up 7-0, right? Because, that you're like, yeah, but when the game's tight, how you going to act, right? How you going to show emotion when it's 1-1, bottom 9, it's the Rhode Island State Championship, and you got to make a big pitch here, or you give up, like, because you at any point you're a pitch away in that type of setting from being on the glorious side or the upset side. So at that point, you have to be able to be in control, and that's where the breathing and comes into play, because that's all you can control. So to your question, I think it's like everybody has their outlet, right? Because I think some guys, like, there's some hot-headed closers that naturally show more emotion, and that's high octane because they're in shorter stints, and that's what they're going to do. Then you have your outlier like Max Scherzer, who shows the emotion, but he pitches, he toes the rubber every 5 days. Like, that's crazy too. And then, like, you have everyone's, like, I put it this way with emotion, it's a jungle, right? But everyone's like, you need all the type of animals to make the jungle like what it is. So I don't think there's like a good or bad way. And I think the great thing about baseball, it's a way to express your emotion, but I think you have to be mindful of the scenario you're in. Like, there has to be a feel component. When you're up 10-0 and you're pounding your chest, pumping your fists, like, come on, like, what's, there's a place and time for it. That's not it.
Or being able to maybe control, like, you have something happen on the field, and then how you're interacting with your teammates and your coaching staff, probably, you guys are looking for stuff like that too, right? To see how they interact with their teammates and the coaches. Yep.
Yeah, I think like how you act with your teammates is huge, because I mean, I never like playing around behind the guy that made an error. If I made an error and the kid was like looking at me, Gabe, come on, let's go, like, whatever. But you know the guy that is fun to play behind is like, hey, I got you again. Next pitch. Let's go. This one's being hit to you. Vice versa. The same thing with an infielder that's saying, hey, give me a ground ball right here. I'm going to make a play when that pitcher's in trouble.
Yep.
So I think that is the element of what you're talking about that's most pertinent. And that's something everybody can do. And that's, you know what that also is? It's another form of visualization. Because now I'm telling me, hey, I'm going to get a ground ball right here. I'm going to get us out of this. Or now I'm saying, I'm going to make a play here. So it all ties together in that sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that fires me up as a scout. I mean, I really but like as a baseball guy, I love that stuff. Fires me up.
It's those little things. Yeah. It's those little things with the how people need to understand that your presence on the mound and all of those little things, as you might be throwing 90 in Ryan high school baseball, but that, big fish, big fish, small pond. And those little things are really what helps get you noticed and allows you to take your career to that next level. Absolutely.
You're 100% right. Those things don't go unnoticed either. You got some guys in there that's what those things really don't go unnoticed. And the thing about it, as a pitcher, that's the guy, if you got bad body language as a pitcher, everybody in the ballpark's looking at you. How can you, that's something they have to be mindful of, because that's you're in control of it. Two, all eyes are on you. That's the one guy who's in the most control of the game, because he can hold the ball, he has the ball in his hand, and he's got bad body language. Guess what? You don't think bad body language rubs off on other players?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I think that's, it's an underappreciated part of the game, is those guys that have big body, because they could fool you, and they overachieve having that.
Yeah.
I think it's important too, because when you're evaluating guys to play over the course of a full season professionally, or if a college recruiter is evaluating guys, these are going to be the guys that they have in the clubhouse and in the locker room every single day. And I was listening to a podcast last week, I think with Butch Thompson of Auburn. He was talking about the guys I bring in are the guys I want to be around every single day. And I think that's important, like you just said, for players to understand, is be the guy who your teammates want to be around every single day. Because like I said, when when you're scouting guys, you want to find the guy that's turning around and saying, hey, this ball's coming to you, after a guy makes an error, because I think that's so important. It's something that goes that's kind of lost in the game today, because we're Matt touched upon earlier, is we're caught up in data and analytics, and the guy wants to go to the showcase and put up the big numbers and do all that. And it's me. But in reality, when you step in between the lines and then it's an actual game and you got to play 9 innings, 7 innings, whatever it is, you have to be about the team, because it's a whole team effort.
Yeah.
It's important. Yeah.
And that's hedging. It's the best of both, because that data and analytics, that stuff is good, man. Yeah. It's really good. But that's where it all gets put together, though, is that right mindset. Because if you can have that right mindset and have a knowledge of that, you're really going to be, you could do some great things.
Yeah. So I guess my question,
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead. All right. I guess my question would be, if you could pinpoint, say, if you have a list of things you're looking for in a guy or girl, for that matter, that they should be conscious of, and when they're out on the field, if there's 3 things that you could pinpoint that you're really looking for in terms of player evaluation, 3 things that stand out to you, if you see those few things that you're yeah, this person has it.
From a mental standpoint, or
anything it is that you kind of see when you're evaluating someone, that you're okay, this person has that it factor almost.
The it factor. So I'm going to think of if you're talking it factor, to me, it's one, you notice their attention to detail, how they go about it. Those guys or girls, they put the uniform on, and you kind of know this is a little different. And then the energy that they have, the energy they play the game with, and their ability to be in control in the energy. And then they always, the it factor, they always do something during the course of the game, whether they have a good and or bad game, that makes a difference in the game. They always do. Like that's what the it factor is, whether it's picking up a teammate, whether it's getting a big hit, whether it's laying down the good bunt or making the good pitch. Like, I think the it factor is hard to pinpoint because when you're around it, you just know it. That's why this guy has it, right? This girl has it.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty of it is the metrics. This is where the metrics don't necessarily teach you, like, know that is the it factor. Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, there's it fastballs or it sliders when you break it down on Rapsodo or TrackMan, right? But that it player is like, you just got to be around him or her and know.
Yeah.
That's it. And you just know how they get their teammates better. You know, that's what it is. They make everyone around them better.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Matt, did you want to? I know you had something.
Yeah, it was. So that was a great broad and talking about the it factor. But we do also have to understand that there are certain metrics that you do look for too, right? So could you give like maybe 3 hitting and 3 pitching things that you're looking for at the high school level and then maybe at the college level?
So first I'll say, like, I like the Rapsodo and TrackMan. It's great because it's like I heard this and I've this said before, and it stuck with me. It's like running a track meet and not having a stopwatch. Like, that's how accurate and descriptive these things are. Like, it can really get the prototype of a pitch. So from that, it's like, I mean, it's tough to really pinpoint like pitch characteristics because I think there's an individuality aspect of it. I mean, everybody wants that guy with a 15 inches of vertical on or down action on the curveball with 2,800 RPMs, right? But like that's hard to come by. So what I'll say is I'll start with the offensive side, and I'll say bat speed's bat speed. Like, like people argue that like bat speed's like not as important or whatever, but bat speed is like when you go to a showcase or something, that's the thing that really sticks out is when a dude's moving well. And I'd say if you're getting in just a showcase setting, it'd be bat speed, your exit velocity, and that's probably the 2 main things from an offensive side. I mean, you just, if it's not hitting, it's offensively it's your 62. I would say those are your 2 most offensive. And going to the pitching aspect of it, it would be velocity. The one thing that's important to look at too is the velocity of the breaking ball, because I think that speaks to some projection. And I could go like there's a lot smarter people with me with that can pinpoint some pitching stuff. So I don't want to speak on that and not know, but like I think there's elements of it that are good, and you can argue them till you want, but I think those would be the main for me.
No, that's fine. It's good to hear it directly from someone, because sometimes you hear so many different viewpoints on projectability and where do I need to be at kids need to know how hard they need to throw to get recognized. Why am I not getting recognized? Why is
So I'll say this though. So I think when you're talking with like really amateur in high school, the metrics are important, but like the one thing I like when you're looking at a young kid, like the ease of operation, is he in control? Is there a lot of effort? How does the arm work? Does he have any feel for spin? Can he manipulate the baseball to the quadrants of the zone? I think those are more important than any single metric at that point, because they're going to get so much better if they have some of those necessary ingredients. Same thing with an offensive guy, because a lot of these, a lot of times these kids, they're not even close to their threshold. So, people say you don't get peak power till like 25 years old. So with that being said, like you need to be able to hit first. So are you on the barrel? Can you make adjustments? That's big on both sides of the ball, the ability to adjust. Are you athletic enough? Do you have the aptitude to make adjustments as a pitcher or hitter? So these are other things that go into the projection, even if the metrics don't add up right at the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
And speaking a little bit to athleticism, there's a kind of two arguments here. Now you hear college coaches and scouts talking about multi-sport athletes, right? So there's that argument where you have that they need to play multiple sports. They need to be able to play in different planes and things like that. And then you have the other side of the argument that says, well, maybe this athlete is just a good athlete, which allows them to play other sports. And then I guess you would even have a third argument that says this kid needs to focus on getting stronger, getting faster in the weight room, and working on his skills to take his game to the next level. So where do you fall on those three things?
Well, I'm a big believer. The argument you have when you're talking about a player and he hasn't solely focused on baseball is usually really good, because you're like, hey, this speaks to some projection. He can get better because he hasn't solely focused on baseball. And I think at younger ages, you need to play other sports like basketball, football, because that's another element of competition. And it's a different way to get the competition, which also can breed instinct.
Mm-hmm.
And then there comes a point in your career, and everybody's is different. And I think this is very dependent on the individual. So I think there's individuals that need to focus on baseball earlier because they don't have that natural athleticism to get away with certain things, and they need to develop their skills to kind of hedge that gap.
Sure.
So I think, if I had it my way, I'd say, yeah, everybody plays 3 sports, but that's not going to happen. You can't. So I think it's just like weighing the pros and cons and seeing like who needs what.
Yeah, I think that's like talking about player development. It's like sitting down and being honest with a guy and saying, hey, like, this is what I think you need. Like, is playing basketball right before baseball season really beneficial if you have the potential to be a guy that's, could get drafted or go play at a high level of college baseball? And I think it's that point of, like you said, being real with someone and like knowing the individual. Because I think individuality is important, and that's where the game is going, where we're catering to the individual to make the whole team successful. Because I think if the individual knows what he needs to do, then it helps the whole team as a whole. So I guess getting back to the point of like we were talking about before, when you're looking at player development today and you're looking at kind of where the game's going, I think talking about getting back into the metric stuff of it, does it impress you more if you go talk to a kid or a coach and he says to you, Ty, this is what I was working on all winter. Like, hey, I know my fastball is 2,400 RPMs. I have 18 inches of vertical ride. So I'm going to pitch up in the zone and throw a breaking ball off that. Or it maybe doesn't have the same type of like wow factor, or a kid that kind of has that wow factor, but is maybe a little all over the place mentally and doesn't seem to kind of have it. So where do you fall on that kind of spectrum, and talk a little bit about that?
Ideally, you do want kids to understand that.
Yeah.
And it's not bad if they don't either.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The most important thing is that they're open-minded enough to understand, to take that knowledge and to ask you questions.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I have, like you said, I have 18 inches of vertical on my fastball. What's going to play out off this? Well, it's not this, it's not that. Like trying to have that hunger to learn it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But at the other side of it, it's also at times like refreshing to hear those kids. Yeah, I've never thrown on a Rapsodo before, but I'm willing to learn. It's like that's good too. So it's a balance, but more than anything else, it's the willingness to learn. But I will say this, it is impressive when you sit down with a young man and he knows what's his stuff's doing, and because it's kind of showing that he's owning his craft and he knows what he knows what his stuff doing. Because a lot of times, like you talk fastball command, and a lot of times, like I've seen, like, so we'll take two seam guys. They don't know what their ball's doing, so they don't have the necessarily control and command, because they don't know that they have 18 inches or 15 inches of horizontal movement, so they have that's why they're all over the place missing 17 inches because of that. So like knowing that is important, because it shows you have some feel and you have some knowledge of what your stuff does.
Yeah. I think that's perfect. That's where I wanted you to kind of go with that, is understanding that, hey, even if you don't know it, that's not an issue. Like, but if you're willing to learn it and understand it and potentially use it to your advantage, I think that's huge, is the coachability aspect of maybe not knowing it, but saying, hey, no, I'm willing to learn it. Like if you were to put me on a Rapsoda right now, I'd sit there and listen to what you have to say about how this is going to help me and benefit me. So no, that's perfect. I'm glad you went there with it, because that's exactly what I think people need to hear, is like, it's fine if you don't know it, but be coachable enough to understand it. So
yeah, and it's not going away. It's there, and it's there for your betterment. It's there for you to develop, and it's when you have something that accurate to tell you what your stuff is doing, you'd be a fool not to use it.
So yeah, I just wanted to kind of take things into a little bit of a different direction in terms of maybe red flags that you're looking for, or that would maybe turn you off from a player from maybe a mechanical standpoint when it comes to pitching and hitting.
Oof, good question. I think I mean, the thing is like guys that aren't in control of their body. I would say that. And when I say that, the usual answer people want to say is they operate with a lot of effort. I don't care about effort if you're in control, right? Because there's Ferraris, there's Honda Civics, there's, every car, but the cars that are in control are the best. I mean, put it that way. Like that's a tough analogy, but I hope that makes sense.
I'm even talking like mechanically. Like,
okay,
let's start with the swing. So, is there anything in a hitter's swing that you don't want to see, that you wouldn't help, that wouldn't project them? Like, and then in that sense, you do see something that's a red flag, and could they be coached out of that, or is that something they just don't have, that they just can't learn it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question, because I think most guys, like I'd be hard pressed to say they can't be coached out of it, because I think there's always a chance someone could break a bad habit, right?
Well, that's an answer right there, though. That means that that you think that guys could be, for the most part, helped when they're yeah. So that's a good answer.
To an extent, yeah. I think most guys can be helped offensively. I mean, it's more for me, like when I look at that, because it's hard. You see guys with bad swings and whatever. I mean, it's not one mechanical flaw. Sometimes it's everything like before the swing that's messed up, right? So whatever it is, their alignment's wrong. Their hand path is inconsistent. They're never in a consistent hitting position. They have a slow trigger. Like, there's things that are you never like to see. But for me, like what I've noticed, that the things before the swing are a lot of times what messes the actual swing up. Because they're putting themselves in bad positions before the swing, and that which makes them rushed or makes something forced or pushed, and they can't necessarily let their body organize right.
Good. Yeah. Definitely. How about from a pitching standpoint? Is there anything that maybe as a red flag from pitching mechanics that you would?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I it's independent, but like I would say, like a lot of guys, they just similarly, they're not on time with where their arms at in the delivery. Like every time at or foot strike, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
That's, to me, that's like a red flag. But then you look at that, because I've seen that before, and you look at it, and if the guys that can throw strikes and still manipulate the baseball, that is the most impressive, because that speaks to their athleticism to get their hand there every time. Now, the ones that are inconsistent, not throwing strikes, then you got to dig a little deeper. You know, is he going to be a good enough athlete? Is he going to be enough adjustable enough to make those adjustments? So I think it both depends. You know, you can argue arm action all you want, but I mean, there's some weird arm actions thrown in the big leagues right now. So like, you know, you can't knock anything. You know, that's the crazy thing. But
Oh, that's good. That's all good information. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about from a positive? Let's go a little bit positive and say, when you're scouting defense, what are you looking for? In maybe let's do infield, catcher, outfield.
Infield, can they dance? I like the guys who can dance. Like, they dance with the ball. That's what I call it. Like, are they in rhythm? You know, how their feet work, because your feet are only good as your hands. So the guys who have good feet, you see guys, those Latin guys with really good hands and stuff, but your feet really speak to how good your hands can be. And usually you see those guys dance in the locker room or on the field. They have rhythm. That's just what it is. And then I'd say that's really important. Your feet. I mean, instead of Golden Glove at those young age, I'd give them, like, this is going to sound contradictory, but golden feet, because if you have good feet, you could become a better infielder, because it just speaks to what you can do with the glove. And then obviously you want to soften up their hands. You look for that. You look there for the I mean, you're really getting into it now. I look for pocket accuracy. Do they have a knack for the ball? And then to tie all three of them, like, we'll go to outfield. It's just like how well they react. Are they always, you see them play without the ball, right? You might not see an outfielder get a ball when you're scouting him or watching him play, but you will see him move to the ball. And are they moving on that foul ball? Like, do they have any instinct? Are they showing that? Or are they just watching the butterfly go by in the wind? Like, that's something you watch too. Like, does he make an adjustment with the hitter? Like, is he reading the hitter swing? That's for everybody on the field.
Yep.
And then catcher, I mean, I like to watch, you know, how he sits. Does he sit comfortably? Is it forced? You know, can they manipulate the baseball in the zone? Like, stuff like that. And then to tie all three of these together, all three of the positions, accuracy of throwing, arm strength obviously is important. That's the most important thing. But then you look at, like, you watch these games on TV, these guys are such accurate throwers. So I think
catch play is very underrated.
Catch plays, it's where it all starts from. Like baseball is a chaotic game of catch if you really think about it, because you're catching ground balls, you're catching fly balls. You know, that's, you know, the team that's the best at catch is usually a pretty good baseball team, if you want to make it simple. But the accuracy and the attention to detail they have with different stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's where it all starts, really. If you go watch a player, the first thing you watch is how they play catch. You know, are they hitting their guy in the target? Are they just blobbing balls? Is there an attention to detail on their throwing? You know, that is so important. And that really, that you see that translate more than you don't, to be honest with you.
And that's why at the youth levels, it kind of ties back into what I was saying before, with not enough practice, too many games, right? They're not taking that time to go over the footwork, the handwork, the glove work with the playing catch, the arm strength. It's like, okay, go out there do your arm circles, do your arm across the chest, and then go out there and throw for like 5 minutes tops, and then we're going into practice. And it's nice to hear you say that you're looking at those pieces that make up catch play and how well it carries over at the upper levels.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important part of development too, because you see guys handle the ball, in catch play. You see guys, how accurate they are. You can get a feel for how their arm works, arm strength, and I mean this is something that will get everybody better the more you pay attention to it. I think like one thing I saw this year and I really liked, and just to get into it a little bit because it ties into what we're talking about, I forgot where I was, but I was watching a college team play, and at the end of their catch play, they were working on different things, whether it was ball handling, quick hands. Saw them working like stretch and catch, like receive the baseball. I saw them work on tagging, all those little attention to detail elements of the game that can be worked on at the end of your catch play. Like the thing is like, how often do you see like, hey guys, warm up, and then these like one guy's done in 5 minutes, one guy's done in 10 minutes. There's such a variety of it, and that might be all they need to get their arm loose, but now there's also a time where you can get better and work on those little details of the game during your catch play.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that, like, even to go from the pitching side of it too, like, I mean, if I'm watching a guy throw and, like, say I was evaluating, I want to see how he plays catch before the game, how he gets ready for the game. Because if you're not ready for the game, it's going to show from pitch one. Like, and I almost want guys to be over-prepared to step on the mound. And I think, like, it's something that when I watch a guy who's getting evaluated, I see scouts watch him play catch, watch him throw a bullpen. Like, I see you guys out there in the bullpen, see you guys out down the right field or left field line watching the guy play catch and how he prepares for his start. Because I think, like, to tie it into pitching too, it's undervalued. Preparation before a game is undervalued, and, like, the process. And having a process, I think, is really crucial. So I don't know, Matt, do you want to open it up to maybe some questions and see if people want to?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to ask. If anyone wanted to type anything in, then, or in the question and answer or the chat, either one is fine. So here, while we're waiting, if especially from a hitter's standpoint, because you're pretty much going to fail in front of a professional scout and a college scout. So how do you handle, or how do you recommend guys handle and girls handle that stuff when they're playing a sport where they're going to fail so much, and then it happens to be that game where the scout comes to watch them play?
I think the first thing is how they handle failure, right? Like, is it going to define them? Are you going to see the failure on them? That's a no-no. Like, you don't want to see that. You can see a kid have a bad game, but once you see in him that he had a bad game, that's tough. You don't want to see that. That's a no. But then I think you really just have to, define what failure is, because it's not really about getting hits anymore. It's more about, putting good swings on the baseball, and, always try to, see the guy make an adjustment rather than, going to the hole and make the same mistake on a pitch over and over again.
Sure. And how do you recommend players handle even from the pressure or the mental side of knowing that they're being observed and they're being watched while they're playing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's good to be mindful that all these people that are watching you, coaches, scouts, a lot of them been there before. Like, they understand what it's like to be watched and to want something so bad, like during when you're trying to perform. So I think it's to handle it is to just like control what you can control. Focus on the present. Don't worry about any of the drama. That's why meditation is so good. and just kind of be okay. Like know the things that you have to do at that time to be successful. I think like that's one thing to just keep in mind. A lot of these scouts, these coaches, they understand that it's, it's not easy to perform in settings like that all the time. And if they don't, then they really don't like it. I'm just going to say it. They really don't understand it because it's hard. It's hard. This is not an easy game. So just to be in control and to know what works and to know how to reset and be focused at the task at hand is probably the most crucial part to what you're talking about.
Sure. John, you want to get that question?
Yeah, I just saw it come up. Someone asked, how has the current circumstances with the virus impacted scouting in the pro level?
Yeah, it's impacted significantly. It's you're watching games on your computer, then going to the game and watching the player. So it's impacted it that way. And as far as information that we don't know much. It's, we're going to find out more in these next couple of weeks. So we're hopeful like everybody else.
See if anyone has anything else. That was the only one so far.
Ty, where do you see yourself going from here after? Is this something that you want to continue to do? Do you want to go into a different part of front office?
No, I mean, I just like being around the game. I'm, just to be blessed to be around the game and meet people that love the game like I do. So I don't really know. I don't really know, to be honest with you, but
Yeah, of course.
We had a couple more come in. Dealing with the mental side of the game, what exercises or strategies would you recommend to a younger player to develop a good mindset?
Yeah, I think so first, I think like just the ability to somehow practice being present. I think at first I would like to say meditation, but for a younger player, there's so much stimulation in their life, like the iPad, cell phone, that I think they need to be okay with this, like being away from it for 20 minutes and just like being able to breathe and be present. And then they can work their way into a meditation type thing. Because I think like and it sounds crazy if somebody told me this at a young age, like, but I wish they did. It's because that element of the game is so undervalued, and it goes. It's not just in baseball that it helps you in life. So I think ultimately like meditation, but hopefully find a way to become present. So whatever that is, whether that's breathing, whatever that's going for a walk away from any devices, whether that's just, like there's a million different techniques, but I think meditation and finding a way to be present, if that helps.
So we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but what, as far as if there's one thing that you can tell a middle school or high school player to work on, what would that be?
One thing I'd from a physical standpoint, I'd say probably work on your arm. I mean, because no matter what, like you're going to need it. If you're a pitcher, you're going to need it. If you're a hitter, and the arm strength and arm, that always plays no matter what. So I think working on your arm is the biggest part of everything. Especially a middle school kid, because that helps the defense, that helps everything.
Sure.
So I'd say that, and I mean, to work on, I mean, just find a way to make the game fun.
Taking some pressure off, maybe from a parent standpoint too, and allowing the kids to play the game for fun, as opposed to always making it about getting scouted at 12 years old.
Yeah. It's, it's everybody wants their son to be Mike Trout, but there's only one of them. So, you got to be able to make it fun. And once you learn to make it fun and breathe and and just be out there like you're playing wiffle ball on the field. That's when you're going to get your best out of that your son's ability.
Sure.
Let's see.
I think that's it right now, John. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I just looked. That was it for now. Wait a few seconds, see if someone types in anything else.
I think I rambled on too much. I answered everybody's questions.
No, I think this is a very unique interview because you have someone coming from the scouting perspective of things who was also a very good college player and then got drafted. So you were the son of a college coach who's now a professional coach. So you have a lot of unique perspective on some of these different questions and talking points.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great game, and I think more than ever, people are realizing like how great it is because it sucks, like it's taken away from everybody right now. So I think at the end of this, there's gonna be a newfound appreciation for just being out there, the little things about the game, the intricacies of it.
Yep, I definitely agree.
I think that's it. I think that was no one typed in anything else, so I guess we'll wrap it up there. But we appreciate you being on with us, Ty. I think that, like Matt said, I think this was really good. We got a lot of different sides to it, and I think it's important for everyone to hear the player evaluation side and like what you guys are looking for, because I don't think that gets talked about enough. And we really appreciate you doing this. And like I said, we look forward to the next guest coming on and kind of continuing the series, and we'll be in touch going forward.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, of course. This whole interview will be on YouTube tomorrow morning. If anybody missed anything, or you want to share it with your friends.
Perfect.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Matt, I'm going to end the recording.